And guess what? Cyril Stover is ready for Tuesday Live. I've actually eaten a bit into your time, Cyril, but surely I'll still come back some minutes to 12. But what a year it has been, Cyril, and surely, I cannot wait to roll with you into the year 2025.
Right, Ayo, it doesn't happen all the time. I suppose it's one of those unique days where on the program Tuesday Live we started 1 year and round off in another year. As it is, we started off in 2024 and rounded off in 2025. But no doubt about it, 2024 was an eventful year on so many fronts. Perhaps after these formal programs, we'll have time to sit out in 2024 and see what lessons we can take into the new year 2025. Well, it's in order to wish you a happy new year. It will be in just less than a couple of hours from now. And it's good to know that you'll be back too. Perhaps when it's midnight, we'll have another go at you talking to various correspondents across the country to find out how the new year has been ushered in. But for now, hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stover. Now, the hysteria over the alleged sighting of a French military base in Nigeria has strangely not abated weeks after the rumor gained traction, particularly in the northern part of Nigeria. But it seems someone originated and disseminated this, probably with the hope of giving it a political coloration. Now, government officials have strenuously refuted the story and provided evidence of its falsity, saying no one could hide white Frenchmen in the Sahel or shelter them in nondescript accommodation along the Nigerian border. Nigeria Republic Junta leader General Abdurrahman Chiani, in a national broadcast, alleged that the Nigerian government is allowing the Lakurawa terrorist group to take root and flourish to the point of now threatening the security of Nigeria Republic. Now, this is the main plank of our discussion tonight, but before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report put together by defense correspondent Olajide Bello.
The government of Niger, led by President Abdurrahman Chiani, was rocked by claims that Nigeria had been secretly aiding the shadowy new terrorist group, Lakurawa. The extremist faction, which had appeared harmless and suddenly out of nowhere, had begun launching brutal attacks on villages along the Niger-Nigeria border. The situation took an even darker turn when Niger claimed that French troops stationed for anti-terrorism operations were allegedly using Nigerian territory as a base for covert operations and collaborating with Nigerian military units in cross-border operations designed to sabotage Niger's oil infrastructure. Their mission, it was claimed, was to burst key oil pipelines in the southern region of Niger to disrupt the country's economic lifeline and destabilize the region further. The Nigerian government, led by President Bola Tinubu, vehemently refuted the accusations, labeling them as baseless and inflammatory. Consequently, the special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, issued a statement clarifying that Nigeria is committed to the peace and stability of the region and categorically rejects any involvement in terrorist activities or sabotage of our neighbors' resources. Uncertainty looms, but the world is watching closely as the fragile thread of diplomacy is held fast for now, and these and more will be x-rayed on Tuesday Live with strategic inputs from well-seasoned experts.
All right, and let's start off by introducing our guests to you. We have here with us in the studio Dr. Kabir Adamu is the founder and chief executive officer, Bacon Consulting Limited and Security Management Solutions. He's known as a security expert. Thanks for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Let me also introduce Honorable Ahmed Sajo, a former Commissioner for Information, Adamawa State. He's a public affairs analyst. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. We expect at some point to be joined by General Jonathan Temlong, First Commander Multinational Joint Task Force. He joins us via Zoom from Jos. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Always a pleasure, Cyril. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And we also have joining us Ambassador Dauda Eladi, former Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. He joins us via Zoom from the United States. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year in advance.
Right, wish you the same. Well, gentlemen, it's the last day of 2024, and at some point in time, when we do cross over to 2025, we'll pause and again acknowledge the fact that we've crossed over to another year. But one of the burning issues that came up in Nigeria, at the very end of the year, was stories flying around about a French military base and the reasons behind what some have alleged was Nigeria's romance with France. But let's start off by looking at Niger's relationship and the perspective in which we've had allegations flying around about the intentions of Nigeria. Let's start with you, Kabir Adam.
Thank you very much, Cyril. The issue is rooted in the coup d'etat that occurred in Niger, and of course Nigeria's response to that coup d'etat. Nigeria's response is rooted in the fact that Nigeria was chairing ECOWAS at that time, so our president was occupying two cabs, as it were, the president of Nigeria and then the chairman of ECOWAS. And the response was in line with ECOWAS' position on democracy, as it were, and the protection of democracy. And of course, the response precipitated the possibility of a military intervention in that country. And so since then, we have seen a reaction, as it were, by the Nigerian junta, first off rejecting that response, and of course associated with that response was economic sanctions too. Those economic sanctions included the suspension of electricity supply to that country. It also included, to an extent, the closure of the border and the allowance of trade between the two countries, which had significant effect on socio-economic conditions within Niger. The fear of the military intervention also created significant concerns within Niger, including the possibility of an attack on the junta itself. So the natural reaction would be for self-preservation, self-protection. And from that period up until we saw the creation of an alliance between the three countries that also had similar circumstances, and that's Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and the creation of the AES. All that we saw during that period was an attempt, as it were, to build consensus around the local, as it were, rejection of France. So from that period onwards, every opportunity the leader of the CNSP, the junta in Niger, had, he would speak against France, using, of course, the previous antecedents of French in that country. Now, in addition to that, and the threat by the Sahelin states to leave ECOWAS, we also saw an attempt by him to create that fear within his country, suggesting, for instance, initially that there were French troops in Benin Republic that were being trained by Benin, and that the intention was that they will attack Niger, including attacking the CNSP. Now, over time, they reached some form of agreement between Niger and the Benin Republic, and that fear subsided. Now, more recently, he now alleged that similar conspiracies was being contrived in Nigeria, as well as in Cote d'Ivoire, and the same pattern that he did when he did that of Benin. Now, we also know that within certain Western diplomats both in Nigeria and Niger, they believe that perhaps that allegation is true. They suggested that satellite imagery in parts of northern Nigeria had indicated the presence of French military hardware in those parts. So maybe they are the ones who fed him with that piece of information, which he relied on. But the fact is, of course, the Nigerian authority has come out to reject in clear terms that there is no French military presence in any part of Nigeria. So it leaves us with the burning question: why should a head of state, irrespective of how he came to power, who enjoys the authority of a sitting head of state, come out and make such categorical allegations, alleging that a friendly neighbor, what used to be a friendly neighbor, is now housing enemies that will come and attack him? It creates, on the one hand, a tension between two friendly neighbors that share significant coterminous border. It also creates a strategic concern regarding the security of Nigeria and, of course, the security of Niger, given the fact that they both have threats from non-state actors that are quite active in both countries. It also brings a question of the political tension that both countries are suffering at the moment. The local dynamics in Nigeria that pitches parts of northern Nigeria, as it were, against the current administration may be hampered by that allegation. There's a theory that suggests that maybe that's what he's even driving at. Then for himself, the fact that a significant number of Nigerians see Nigeria, especially northern Nigeria, not just as a brotherly neighbor, but a neighbor that a relationship that is embedded in history. And so any attempt to sever that relationship by nefarious allegations he has made would be one that a significant number of Nigerians would not be happy about. So this is the kind of trend that we've seen from the time that allegation was made up until now. One thing that I would say has come out almost very clear is his inability as a leader to support his allegation with credible evidence.
So, quite comprehensive. We're taking us down to the build-up to all of this. But at this point, let me also introduce another of our guests who's joining us. Senator Sheikh Hussaini is a public affairs analyst. He'll also be with us tonight. Senator, good to see you. All right, we do hope we'll get his attention as we go on. But back here in the studio, Saju, what do you make of this?
Well, I want to look at it from a perspective of a communicator. The first thing I noticed is that the man used state-owned medium. If we had used any credible medium, international or even local but privately owned, credible medium, they would have asked him for some proof of some of the allegations that he has, laid before the public. The second thing I noticed is that the whole conversation was in Hausa, and it's automatically, it tells you that it's directed at the northern part of Nigeria. But for sure, you don't need to be told what the essence is. The essence is actually, to attack or at least to create some kind of confusion in northern Nigeria because of the prevailing circumstances. But I also did some content analysis of some of the issues that he had raised. Take, for example, the Lakurawa issue. Lakurawa has its base in Mali, and Mali has no border whatsoever with Nigeria. So if any Lakurawa were to leave Mali and come to Nigeria, he has to pass through the entire Niger. So the safe passage must have been provided by Niger itself for these people to come to Nigeria. So why would anybody blame Nigeria for a group of people that leave Mali and pass through Niger to come into Nigeria? I see that as not adding up at all. I also noticed that, the use of the names of some of prominent security chiefs in Nigeria is just trying to lend credence to what he's saying, but there is no evidence linking any of all of these people, in a credible manner to the things that are being said. And there is also no evidence so far of any French troops, a cantonment of French troops, where are they located? But where are the hardware? Where are even if they are intent, to put soldiers in a place, you need a large number of tents. And then, so I see a lot of things that are happening. And like my brother here said, his first attempt was actually to go up and accuse Benin Republic. And they export their oil through the port in Benin Republic. So when they realized that may not necessarily pay off, they had to retreat back, and now it's Nigeria that they are attacking. But we have no business with their oil in Nigeria. The oil does not pass through our ports. It's between them and Benin Republic. So the way I look at it is that, for some of us that have attempted to go into the social media within the Niger community, there are two things they're talking about over there. If you go to their social media content, and there are two things. One group is saying, look, the man is having difficulty running the system. The challenges from people within his country are becoming too much for him, so he needed a diversion. So this could be a diversion. Now start talking about Nigeria, blame Nigeria, start organizing people to say Nigerian leaders are responsible for their hardship instead of himself as the leader. Another group says, look, there is a pattern. When the Russians want to come and develop their influence, they create adversaries around the country so that their relationship will be more of security than economic, and that they want a situation where Niger, clearly indicates that they have a threat from Nigeria, so they can bring in arms and ammunition and entrench themselves in Niger, and that they could make money available to the junta, to be able to comfortably, drive this process. And one of the things that can happen is actually to make this kind of allegations and create a threat level that necessitates support from Russia. I don't know what really could be the case, but I know that everything that has been said by the Nigerian cannot be verified and should not be taken as true.
All right, thank you so very much. And at this point, let's go up to Jos and link up with retired General Jonathan Temlong, who is the first commander of the North National Joint Task Force. He joins us via Zoom. General, if you're there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Right. I'm sure you've found all of this interesting, particularly the build-up which Dr. Kabir Adamu laid out for us, and you just heard Honorable Ahmed Sajo in his comments on that. Let's hear your perspective, seeing that this allegation is that Nigeria is harboring a terrorist group, as far as we know, and the hope of destabilizing a neighboring country. And when the facts show that Nigeria has been battling with terrorist entities for quite some time now, and so does it all make sense, these allegations?
Well, thank you very much, Will. I don't think it adds up because from experience, if you look at what is happening or what has happened in other countries, the Americans had their Iranians, Afghanistan. When the Soviet Union or the Russians were in Afghanistan, it was the Americans that brought up the Taliban and armed them and supported them against the Soviets. Now, the Taliban later on had a rough deal with the Americans, and in the end, America has to have beat a hasty retreat out of that country. So no country in its right senses will want to have terrorist groups in its country and to be used against others, because they will definitely turn against you. I think we discussed this last time on this channel with you, where we found out that the Lakuras themselves were brought in by a traditional ruler in Sokoto State to ostensibly to help them fight bandits who are rustling the animals and the rest. Now, in the end, he was consumed by the Lakuras. So it's a common thing for you to know that even at that level, at the small level, it happened that they turn against those who brought them in. And so for you to now, for a country as Nigeria, with all these strategic inputs, with all the institutions of state in place, to harbor a terrorist group to be used against Niger doesn't add up. In any case, the story itself, from a strategic perspective, I tell you as a military personnel, why would France withdraw and then come back to do a forced entry into Niger to attack the regime? They would have used the period when they say move out of that place, and in the process of moving out, attack and take over that country. Why do you have to go out and come back more in a way that is going to be more expensive, more risky, because you are going to have more logistics of moving troops from a base, staging base, and then having a forced entry into a country, establishing a foothold before you do all your attacks? Why do you need that? You are already on ground. You only have all the facilities on ground. All the officers that you were there had known, and they had interacted with all officers. They had all the reports of them. They knew where they are and how they could take them up one by one. So I think France could have done that, as against going back out to the Republic, Nigeria, and set that basis and then go back and attack. It doesn't happen naturally. It's something that you will not even start thinking of. Now, if you look at it again, you say the names that they brought up, like you said, was to give them credibility. In any case, there were no names, because terrorism is an international crime against humanity. So there are sharing of information, and who did they pick up? Our Director of National Intelligence then, Ahmed Rufai, who was interacting with them, which they know him very well. The National Security Advisor, they know him very well. So those interactions are there. But what even beats my imagination is that somebody will leave Nigeria and fly to Central African Republic to go and plan there. Central African Republic has no borders with Nigeria. There is no continuity. You have to pass through either Cameroon or you go through Chad to get to Nigeria. How do they ferry those arms and the rest? Do they add up? They don't even add up. So I think the internal dynamics itself, like was mentioned by my previous contributors, the internal dynamic itself in Niger is telling, because there is crisis of expectation. There's high hopes. You send out the French, will take control of our affairs, and things will be good. But as it is now, they are not as what they thought it would be. So what do? You want to divert attention. And by diverting attention is to look at Nigeria and look at the internal dynamics and the fault lines in Nigeria and target northern Nigeria, so that you can whip up sentiments against a regime that is either being thought to be anti-North in court, anti-Niger in court, being because he's the chairman of ECOWAS, who said they are going to hit ECOWAS. So what do you look at the fault lines and then use that? So I think that in itself, and if you look at those who came out with the news about the basis where they came from, and you see how vehement or how serious they were about it. So you link up. And the last point that I want to raise seriously is that the Russians have a system that they call Maskarova. Maskarova is you target the highest echelon of any government, so every level, and sort of deceive. Is a deception method that you deceive them using your intelligence assets. And part of that intelligence asset is to create that sense of insecurity that you need to fill the vacuum that the French provided for you before. And so you needed us, and that you have serious threats coming from Nigeria, which is the hegemon around this area. You have Benin Republic, which is your economic route. So you need to have a force that will be in your place, institute, or a hegemon that will be able to support you. So what you now need is that you need a country that will come and fill that vacuum, and that will be the Russians in many cases, because the Americans and the French will not do that bit, because they have set up the Americans to themselves. So Russia itself wants to occupy that place. So if you see Maskarova working that perfectly well for the regime, and to look at it, like how did the Lacroix come into this thing? They were invited not from Mali but from Niger. They were already inside Niger. So they were invited from Niger, and they had the backing of the former regime. Like I told you earlier on, they are part of a Fulani militia force which transmitted into the Lagos to fight those who are rustling the cattle and the rest. So they are used to all. They were armed by the Nigerian government. They know them. The leadership, they know them. And the arms was provided by them. So it's not something new. So if the former regime did that, if they want to dismantle that the Lacroix, that they can do it, because they know the leadership and they know the set of arms and ammunition that they have supplied to them. However, because they have links now with other terrorist groups, it's going to be difficult. But the Nigerian government needs to put its acts together and start trying to solve its problem rather than casting aspersions against other countries, thinking that what they are doing is to put the blame on Nigeria and have justification to whip up sentiments both in their country and Nigeria. I think it's something that needs to be done in a way that should be done in a more civilized and strategic way of doing things, not this ways of trying to put that wage across.
All right. Well, thank you so much, General. We'll return to you. But let's go back to Ambassador Dauda Nladi, who is in the U.S., Nigeria's former High Commissioner to Pakistan.
Well,
Yes, if we might just link up with Ambassador Dauda Nladi, former High Commissioner to Pakistan. Well, Ambassador, allegations such as these are capable of escalating political tensions between Nigeria, and not just Niger, given its influence, but also some countries who share sentiment in certain matters and respects with Niger. What does this say in international diplomacy?
Well, I think first of all, I want to appreciate the panelists. They have made a good analysis of the situation. The actions of President Cheney really is on protocol. Diplomatic rhetoric that could create sentiment has been observed. But I think there is a need for us to remind the military junta that Nigeria and Niger have deep-rooted historical ties. period of decades. You see, historically, the southeastern part of Niger was part of the Borno Empire in the 16 to 17 to 1800s, and that part today, the Kanuri language is widely spoken in that part of Niger Republic. If you look at the west part of Niger, it was part of the Sokoto territory, and of course, Hausa and Fulfulde are widely spoken. So we have deep-rooted cultural and historical ties with Niger. I think they should be reminded, and I would like to look at the aspect of the bilateral aspect, the consequences of their action. It was this deep-rooted tie that gave birth to the Nigeria Joint Commission that was established in the 70s. And we have dozens of bilateral agreements with Niger. They should be reminded that the agreements ranges from defense cooperation, which was renewed recently, and the economic assistance that Nigeria has been rendering to Niger over the years, water resource management because of Lake Chad Basin and the Niger Basin Development Authorities, energy cooperation will supply about 50% of Nigeria's energy requirement, educational assistance, food security, a landlocked country. I think they should be reminded of the consequences of their actions to jeopardize the fraternal relationship that has existed between these two countries. Look at the commitment of Nigeria to construct a red line that will link Kano, Jigawa up to Maradi. The great opportunity that that project will bring. A project that will cost about almost $2 billion US. Let's look at the agreement that has been signed between Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria on the Trans-Sahara gas pipeline that will traverse Niger up to Algeria to supply Nigeria's natural gas, about 30 billion cubic meters of gas, to Europe. It will create great opportunities for Nigeria, for Niger, and Algeria. The junta needs to be reminded that Nigeria stands to gain nothing from destabilizing Niger. We know what government has done over the years as a result of food insecurity in Niger, as a result of refugees. In fact, it culminated in the award of highest honor of Niger to some border states from Yobe, from Borno, Yobe, right up to Jigawa, Katsina, Sokoto. The governors of these neighboring states received the highest award from the Niger Republic. We should remind this junta that Nigeria stands to gain nothing from destabilizing Niger. We have 1,400 kilometer borderline. We have border security cooperation to monitor and to fight trans-border crimes. They are a member of the multinational task force. And it's great to see General Temlong, because I was in Borno when he was also the commanding officer. I was in the government, and we worked together. We stand to gain nothing. So this rhetorics, I think, is born out of frustrations, because we have diplomatic channels that are open, our embassies are still functioning. These weighty allegations would have passed through the diplomatic channel so that a high-level bilateral talk will take place to discuss honestly, openly, and transparently these allegations towards amicable resolutions.
Right.
But the actions there, we hope there will not be a pawn in the scramble for Africa, where Russia, China, the United States, and of course even the Saudis, the Emiratis are all here. And we hope there will not be a pawn in order order to create an isolationist oriented program, and they would be exploited by this the victims of this competition.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Dauda and Ladi. Let's return to Kaduna now, and we'll link up with Senator Sheikh Husani, who has listened to the contributions for our other discussants. And Senator, what do you make of these? From every point of view, these allegations coming from someone who leads a country may be seen as weighty. And on the other hand, to also see that some Nigerian citizens actually believed what they had from across the borders. The studio, Sergio, as a communicator, we just mentioned that some Nigerians actually swallowed that hook, line and sinker. In fact, there was a use of social media where some citizens actually circulated some footage which they claimed were French soldiers who were actually training somewhere in Nigerian territory.
I think they're taking advantage of the explosion in means of communication across the world, and of course the fact that a lot of people do not care about fact-checking or verifying whatever information they have. They share it raw. One of the pictures that they've been using on the social media has been fact-checked by a very credible media organization in Nigeria, and it has been found to be the arrival of French military training contingent in Mali about 3 years ago. So people are just using the social media to peddle all manner of information. Some groups have also, lent their voices, particularly groups in northern Nigeria. The whole essence was actually to create, to take advantage of this feeling that, that there is hostility towards some sections of northern Nigeria, and so cashing on that, and they push the narratives so that it could catch in northern Nigeria. But some of us had even predicted that very soon they will look for money from whoever is sponsoring this kind of malicious allegations against Nigeria to rent some certain crowds across the country, in the northern parts of the country, to say, but they could not do it right into any northern states, but they have rented a crowd of northern Nigerians living in Niger to lend credence to everything that happens. So all of it is trying to exploit, the information explosion, within the globe, and to also exploit, like the general said, to see if there are natural fault lines within the political setup in Nigeria that can be used to wage it wider and create misunderstanding within Nigeria. And I think at this point it's very necessary, as a northerner, to appeal to our brothers in northern Nigeria that, look, it's not every lies that have been told against our government that should merit either our support or acquiescence or even, a repetition, because repeating lies can never make it the truth, but it can cause confusion within the communities.
All right, let's see if we can return to Kaduna now and re-establish those links with Senator Sheikh Husani. I believe we have that link up and running now, and yes, Senator, we were with you a short while ago, and we wanted to hear your perspective on what we're discussing so far, with the allegations emanating from Niger, and the fact that some Nigerians particularly using the power of the social media, have repeated such allegations and actually believed it and have gone ahead to even circulate footage that have been debunked. Let's return to the studio here in Abuja, and we have Kabir here with us, and we'll still work on that links with Kaduna and see what we can get out of it. Yes, going by the fact that one of the biggest tools that's been employed now in the spread of information is what we've come to know as social media. Given the level of attachment to it, it's so easy to get millions to just swallow whatever they see on it. Not many people bother to do any fact checking. It's so easy to just click and share, and it goes viral. And it would seem that the more conspiratorial the content is, the more viral it goes.
Definitely. You see, if it bleeds, then it falls.
Yeah,
And unfortunately,
it leads.
This is one of the, I would say, driving philosophies of modern day media, sadly. And allow me to play the devil's advocate here. Since the CNSP came to power, it appears to me that it has embraced the propaganda machinery. It identified its oxygen is actually to drive the anti-French sentiment. And so it has used every medium to continue to push out both true and false stories regarding that anti-French sentiment within Niger. Now, the easiest medium to achieve that is through the social media. And evidence has also supported this, that misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda are tools that are being used by that machinery. There is also suggestion that it is being supported by Russia. There is enough evidence to suggest that not just Russia, several international Western countries too have some sort of misinformation and disinformation machinery within the African continent, all in an attempt to achieve their objectives. And so when the kind of video that was put out, by the CNSP leader, General Chani, where he, engaged in an interview and then leveled allegations. Of course, it was all over social media. And one of my, I would say, saddest realization was the fact that the day after that interview, a significant number of mainstream media also featured it as their front page material. So rendering, as it were, supporting him in his regard. Now, that leaves me with one great question. So, what is our strategic communication objective as a country? How much have we engaged our media, mainstream media, to understand that strategic objective? I mean, yeah, free media, you can cover it, but why give it front page relevance in the manner that it was given? So that made me extremely worried. If we play along, in this instance, he has an objective. He has granted the interview, he said some ridiculous things, and he's trying to achieve the objective. We are playing along inadvertently and supporting him in that regard. Now, if our strategic communication objective was outlined and our media houses do understand that, perhaps they would have handled it differently. So going forward, that is one area I would like us to look very closely at. First off, what is our foreign policy objective? How have we captured since the coup in Niger and our reaction to that? I mean, even a child today would tell you that he knows that we are close to France. Meanwhile, as a researcher and someone who is observing trends and development, I have seen how our neighboring countries, including Niger, are moving away from France. So it begs the question, what are our imperatives? How are we marshalling out that imperative? I say all of this because this is what the social media is playing around. And do not provide direction on the manner that we want to go and the objective we want to achieve, then this is something we'll have to live with into 2025, and I don't want that to happen.
All right, we'll try once more and see if we can still get back to Senator Shehu Sani. I'm told that the links are up and running now, and he can hear us and we can hear him. So let's pause. And my expectation is that having gotten so many appeals from leaders and elements in ECOWAS, for them, for Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso to reconsider their exit and position, and they will have been diplomatic. I know that we have taken some wrong steps after the overthrow of the democratically elected government in that country, but there are also attempts to mend fences. At a certain time, I saw the chief of defense staff visiting Niger, and I saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs and some other representations all trying to mend fences. That was a good opportunity. What is happening in Niger today, if you look at it, since the collapse of the regime in Syria, there is this fear that Russia, that has provided the reinforcement, the arms, the protection for the government of Syria, has its hands full in Ukraine. And if we cannot protect Assad in Syria, how can it protect the three military regimes that are aligned themselves with Russia? I have read it somewhere. Actually, the Niger have taken back their country. They have sent out France, sent out America, and not just in terms of evicting them from the military bases, but in areas specifically that has to do with uranium industry. But the Russians are reluctant of taking those mines that were left behind by France, which ones were evicted. Now, Chani is looking for a scapegoat, and he believes that by escalating the problem, he will have a reason to provide to his people, because when you are occupying the position of that military regime, you always look at your back and shoulders of what may happen to you at any time. So he speaks to appeal to his people by blaming certain forces, by creating conjectures and assumptions that are false, and also by trying to see how that can divide the public in Nigeria. As far as I'm concerned, I think ECOWAS must move collectively. Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali have a choice to isolate themselves in what they call Alliance of Sahelian States, or they come back to the fold of ECOWAS and work on a regional level. The situation we are in West Africa today is one in which there is a need for all nations to work together to confront a common danger and common evil that is threatening to extinguish our own people. Niger and Nigeria have a common enemy, fighting terror. At a certain time, there were over 100,000 Nigerians from Katsina State and parts of Zamfara State and were seeking refuge in Niger. And we also have Nigerians who have moved into Nigeria. At a certain point, we have seen the multinational joint action between Nigeria, Niger, and Chad achieving results in the Lake Chad region. So even if you want to pull out yourself from ECOWAS, but we still have a common enemy who is not bothered whether you are in ECOWAS or not, and that to those enemies, both Niger and Nigeria are targets. So as far as I'm concerned, my own position is that Nigerians should never take such allegations with a pinch of salt, because what he is saying, he has no proof, is simply putting one
one and one together. And then secondly, the challenges we face as a country today demands cooperation with our neighbors. Niger alone, with Burkina Faso and Mali, they can fight terrorism. They are now military, it's a military government that are in power. But the thought was that when military takes over power, they can confront and annihilate the terrorists at a go. But it's so clear that the attacks by terrorists in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger on military targets, on civilian targets, are continuing. Even Russians were killed. So your best bet, the best bet of all of us, is to work together to confront this common danger and see how we can protect our own country. And for those of them, it's their own affair. If they want to keep military government from demonstrating, it's for the people of Niger to fight and to stand. Nigerians fought, and now we are a democracy. So my own position on this is that no leader, no African leader worth being called a leader should politicize matters of security, especially when two nations are involved. And for those of us in this country, the more we continue to support our armed forces, support our security forces to confront this danger, the better for us. And we are so glad that results have been achieved. I'm in Kaduna now. It wasn't like this in the last 5 to 6, 7, and 8 years. Now people can move from Kaduna to Benungwari, Kaduna to Abuja, and the trains are safer, and people are going back to their farms, and people can move relatively safer. It's not that kidnapping is not going on, but there is comparative accomplishment and progress being made, which we appreciate enough. This is what needs to be consolidated, and we shouldn't in any way listen to such kind of deceptive, fraudulent and misleading points by China. But we need China to work together with us, because Niger cannot be safe if Nigeria is not safe, and vice versa. That is my view on this.
All right, thank you so much. We'll return to you. But let me go back to Ambassador Eladi at this point in time. And, Kabir Adabo has raised a point here where he talked about defining Nigeria's foreign policy and being sure that we have a kind of strategic communication policy in which to, carry Nigerians, the citizens along as to the intentions of government. Because you do hear a lot being said now that Nigeria is building a relationship with France, which before now wasn't there. That goes around everywhere in the country. So the question would be, in what direction is Nigeria going with regards to relationship with France? At some point in time, what went around was developing a relationship with China. But here we are today, and the feeling is that there is a leaning towards France. Perhaps it is with this that the junta in Niger can find it easy to fuel rumors about setting up a base to attack Niger.
I think the government has started on a very good footing. We should not allow sentiments and emotions to cloud our judgment. The refutation of the allegation is quite commendable, but more needs to be done. The Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency, and of course in collaboration with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, should continue to educate our people on this rhetoric and frivolous allegations. But if the action of China was as a result of our bilateral or renewed fraternal bilateral relations with France, I think it is a misplaced one, because Nigeria had long bilateral relations with France. The military junta knows that Nigeria is the largest trading partner with France in sub-Saharan Africa, in fact in the African continent, Nigeria is number 4th, followed by behind Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. And the trading volume between France and Nigeria is about 3.5 billion US dollars. We have over 120 French companies that have been operating here in Nigeria. So that should not be a basis for France to for Niger to feel insecure. We are a sovereign nation. They are a sovereign nation. They are taking decisions according to them. They want to reclaim their economic independence. Nothing wrong with that. But if they are overwhelmed, then they should not look for scapegoats. And that is why I said it is mind-boggling that despite the fact that our diplomatic channels are open, they are still functioning, this weighty allegation should have gone through the diplomatic channel to avoid all this unnecessary hitting of the polity. The second thing that I want to observe is that yes, Burkina Faso, if you remember, I think, was it in July, made similar allegations whereby they accuse Benin and Ivory Coast that they are colluding with France, and that about 5 military bases were established in order to fuel insurgency in the Sahel as well as destabilize Burkina Faso. And I think these two ECOWAS member countries have come out to refute that allegation. I think the whole thing is it should be devoid of sentiments and emotions. ECOWAS should be focused in redoubling its efforts to bring back this military junta back to the fold. I think at this time there is the need to also deploy non-state actors, our religious leaders, our traditional institutions that have links with Niger, eminent personalities will all be engaged and deployed to bring sanity to the whole scenario. You see, united we are stronger, and the platform that ECOWAS has provided is a veritable platform that gives ECOWAS member states the leverage to negotiate favorable trade deals when holding bilateral talks with other nations or when dealing with international financial institutions. Why? Because of the market that ECOWAS has provided. ECOWAS is the strongest regional bloc in the African continent, a region that can boast of export value to about over 150 billion US dollars, so representing about 0.6% of global export. And in terms of import, about 190 billion US dollars, representing about 0.8%. That is a very solid platform that can give this member state countries the leverage to negotiate favorable trade deals. Because why? The market is there. The opportunities are there. A bloc within a bloc will yield nothing. When Africa was divided during the Berlin conference into smaller nations, was to produce nations that are politically, economically weak. Nations that cannot really have a bargaining power when dealing with other bigger nations. And I think the regionalization was a step in the right direction so that African countries can come with a bloc and speak with one voice. And the advantages are there. These military juntas need to be reminded that military governments are not sustainable governments. Whatever it takes is a matter of time. And I think at this level, I will call on the deployment of non-state actors in collaboration with the ECOWAS Wise Men Council and Women Council, civil society organizations, to really talk to their counterparts in Niger so that Nigerians can also have a voice in calling to order the military junta to see the reality and rationale of being together.
All right, let me get to General Temlong, and this is to take a closer look at the incidents of insecurity in Nigeria. particularly in northern part of Nigeria. And you easily see this in large scales, in areas where you have huge natural deposits, of course. Lending credence to insecurity and terrorism being linked to economic exploitation in parts of those places. Now, the Nigerian government has put in a lot to bring down to the barest minimum these incidences, but it's not over yet. But we do see this happening, which leads us to think: is there a link? And perhaps that link is what's been exploited by people who have so many conspiracy theories about collaboration between some citizens themselves, exploiting these resources and using the attacks as a smoke screen to get away with what is straightforward crime and criminality in general.
Thank you very much, Sir. I think that's a very relevant question. If you look at from Congo, immediately after the independence of Congo, you found that the crisis there, the old mineral crisis were backed. The blood diamonds in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and all over the world where there are gold, diamonds, and rich minerals, you have a lot of warlords coming in. They have a lot of money that they will use in trying to protect their turf. In collaboration with highly placed government officials could benefit from this. And that's why when we talk about soft power elements being more in combating this crisis that we're talking about, it goes to the root of it, because these people use the international financial system. They sell gold in dollars. They go through banking system. And so what you need is to cut the source of their market. Unfortunately, if you go to Abuja at the Hilton, I'm told Zamfara gold is all over the place, being shipped to UAE, very high quality gold. And so these are people who come in, you can imagine they sell, if they take $1 million from their sales and start raising up militia forces or supporting terrorists to protect their turf for them to be able to mine those areas. It's using the locals and the important dignitaries around that area. And so there's not much that the military and the security forces can do, because these are very influential people, highly placed people that some of them are like the untouchables. But if the government has the willpower and is able to employ the 70% soft power, the elements that we're saying in this crisis, they should be able to stem this thing and make sure that the proceeds from this gold and these minerals that are all over, they go to government. Look at what happened in the South. Even right now, how do they steal away our oil? Is it the poor boys who are in the pigs there that are able to sell oil in the international market? No. Somebody said the oil thieves are in Lagos and Abuja, because those boys just load those ships for them, and those ships sell out and they just give them pittance. So I think we need to look at it seriously, that it is something that has been there for years. Nigeria cannot be an exception. We have to take concrete steps to make sure that we rein in those who are getting from these illegal activities that are going, criminal cartels that are being formed. And if you listen to some of them, even though you take what they say with a pinch of salt, you hear that there are a lot of highly placed people that are linked with all these things. So I believe that we need to do something seriously about that, because if we don't, it's all over the world. Sierra Leone, Liberia, Congo, Angola, you name it. They are all part of the mineral-based crisis that are in influence, and they are actually perpetuated by the elite and those in leadership. So definitely we have to look at it seriously and start working on it. On a serious note, even now that the government says they have lifted the ban on mining in Zamfara State, there was actually no ban because mining was going on in Zamfara State as it were. But how do we actually make sure that what is mined in Zamfara State counts into the coffers of government? What percentage are we getting money from it? That's what people are saying. It's very simple, easy to carry gold in a briefcase. Unlike oil, that you have to use a whole big super tankard. So for gold and diamonds, you use briefcases to carry them. So how do we actually make sure that government is making, and then we cut off all these criminals that are taking advantage of our weak criminal justice system, of our weak institutions to exploit us to this extent, because they will continue to perpetuate the criminal systems so that they benefit from it. We have to do something about it. It has to be done quickly too.
All right. Right, thank you so much. Let me head back to Kaduna now and link up once more with Senator Sheikh Sani. And a question here for you, Senator, is with this seeming row brewing between Nigeria and Nigeria, what is the best and most effective way to nip it in the bud and stem these allegations and rumors as quickly as possible? Yes, as someone has mentioned earlier, that Niger has a right to pull out from any organization which it voluntarily subscribed to, but then there is the reality that it shares borders with Nigeria, and it cannot overnight sever every link, considering the deep-rooted links between both countries. So how best to lay this ghost to rest?
Well, I think the earlier we find a solution to the diplomatic rift between Nigeria and Niger and between the Sahelian states and ECOWAS, I think the better for us all. Like I've said earlier, we are facing a common threat, a threat that is threatening our peace, our security, our democracy, and our very existence as a people in this subregion. There is no better time for us to work together to confront this problem than now. And Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso can pull out of ECOWAS if they so decide. But what is clear is that their pulling out of ECOWAS will not bring an end to the security challenges they are facing, or the one that we are facing together as in subregion. And secondly, pulling out of ECOWAS will not end the cultural, historic, and also people-to-people relationship that exists between our borders. Where do we go from here? I think it's important that at least the African Union should step in to see how they can, in one way or another, at least guarantee the joint action between Nigeria, Niger, and Burkina Faso as far as security matters is concerned. If they want to go and form their Sahelian states, they should be allowed to do that. But on matters of security, we must work together. And again, leaders from both countries that are whether religious, traditional, or community leaders or border leaders within those nations, they also need to step up and see how this issue can be resolved. Because in disunity, the terrorists will continue to succeed against us If Nigeria is not talking to Nigeria, Nigeria is not talking to Nigeria, it creates a vacuum. It's a lacuna to which these terror groups can thrive and succeed. And as for us as a country, I think we should not lose our heads because of what Niger is doing. They have a government that is the basis of it, the legitimacy of it is under question. We don't have that problem here. So we shouldn't think like the way they do. But our own national interest, the security of our country should be paramount. If they are going out of everywhere, let's go, but let's work together in matters of security. This is my view. AU need to come in, possibly UN should step in and see how they address. Because I've seen the global powers playing politics with security matters as far as this sub-region is concerned. France actually has been in this Sahelian country for almost 3 to 4 decades as far as military allies, because they are not able to address the problem of terrorism. And I don't think relying on Russia also will guarantee security for Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali as far as the situation. They have no way out now other than to work together. And getting out of course is their right to do that. But I think it's going to be a very wrong step for them to do, taking cognizance that as you are part of the family, you will be able to win this battle together. So this is my own position on this.
Thank you so very much, Senator Shehu Sadi. Thank you for joining us in this conversation from Kaduna. And here's wishing you a very happy and prosperous 2025. Thank you. Right, back here. Quickly, Saju. Again, I go back to what Kabiru Adamu said earlier. Do we have an effective strategic communication policy?
I think, let me say that from the responses, a lot of people are saying there were no responses. There were very good responses, and the responses from the Minister of Information and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, these responses were mature, and they actually, were measured, and they address the issues without emotions or sentiments. And I think that should be our strategic communication objectives. We should not be violent in our communications. We should not be, irresponsible in our communications, because at the end of the day, the quarrels, the misunderstandings may be resolved, and we will still have to sit again back on the round table together as brothers. So I think for now, but where we really need to do a lot more work from our own perspective is that we need to also begin to communicate with our people more on issues that relate to this kind of accusations. If we are accused of harboring a base and we don't have a base, we have a responsibility to actually do a comprehensive investigation and put it on table that, look, these communities are here, and this is our findings, and this is the truth about it, and that there's no, but that, nobody should choose friends for us. Even as an individual, you choose your friends. If your friends don't choose you, so nobody should tell you who to be friends with and who not to be friends with. I think that is, overstepping the bounds.
Perhaps in just one sentence, if people were to look at, yes, there is a relationship with a country that one country has fallen out with, and that seems to suggest that once my enemy is not your enemy, then my enemy is your friend, and probably you're plotting something. Yeah, ridiculous as that might sound.
I think, no, but the way I look at what is happening in Niger, I am more inclined to believe that they're trying to create an atmosphere of fear, so that the Russians' resources could come in handy. I think that is the most plausible explanation for what is happening.
All right. At this point in time, let me just say we are still here with Dr. Kabiru Adamu and Honorable Arun Saju, as well as General Temlong and Ambassador Enladi. But for now, we'll take a short break and return to Ayodeji. It's back to Tuesday Live, and we're still here. I did say to you that we'll be back, and I still have with me here in the Abuja studio Dr. Kabir Adabu, and of course Honorable Ahmed Sajul here with me, and we still have General Jonathan Temlong, who's joining us from Jos, and Ambassador Enladi, who is with us all the way from the United States of America. So it's back to the issues just before we give room to Ayo to round off his cusp. It's back to the issue, the allegations made by Nigeria against Nigeria. And before we took that short break, we were talking about communicating what Nigeria is actually doing with France. And as we heard from the ambassador earlier on, Nigeria-France relations have been on for so long in so many ways. And so it's not as if Nigeria just woke up one morning and decided to start this romance with France. It's been there. And so every suggestion to the contrary is to be disregarded. But again, we did say, what would be the best way for the Nigerian state to communicate to its citizens that what's happening with France is nothing new, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the sad relations between France and Nigeria. And of course, you would know that just a short time ago, ECOWAS did give an extended room to those countries to rethink their exit from ECOWAS. So it's not as if there is some war going on with them. They've been given an opportunity to return to the fold. It's left to be seen if they're going to take that opportunity or not. But let's go to Ambassador Enladi and ask once again how we can put all this to rest. And if indeed those countries determine that it's in their own best interest to exit, and how Nigeria's relationship should be with them. That's on one hand. And on the other, why would it seem for any reason that because one country has a soured relations with another, then Nigeria must necessarily do the same?
Well, I think you have asked two questions, and they are very good questions. The first one, what can we do to bring them back? And I think already ECOWAS has set in motion, and it has redoubled its diplomatic efforts to make this country see reason to come back, and to also understand the consequences economically, socially, the impact it will have on its citizens. The other aspect is perhaps, as I have suggested, the use of non-state actors. Our traditional institutions have linkages with their traditional institutions, our religious leaders, eminent personalities, the civil society organizations, in addition to the Council of the Wise of ECOWAS, all should be deployed. I think at this level, going now, we are now in the new year, the African Union might also step in for them to see reason, because together we are stronger and divided we will be weak. The security challenges in the Sahel, these countries are landlocked countries. I do not think we'll be able to confront these security challenges without cooperation. And there are still existing cooperation which has not been severed, and as such it should be pursued. The other thing is that if these countries insist that they have to break away, then perhaps at the end of the day we may have to, ECOWAS may have to seek an agreement with the Sahelian Alliance so that we can calibrate and have a framework for disengagement that would also lead to peaceful cohabitation for stability in the region.
Let me just stay with you a little longer. There are reports that some Nigerians in Niger have been asked to leave, that they may feel threatened in some way or the other because of the current state of affairs. What will you say to that?
It is mind-boggling because if today Nigeria welts the big stick and asks Nigerians to leave, you see, most of the so-called Hausa in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in the south, if you look at and trace their origin, most of them are from Nigeria. And if today Nigeria will the big stick and say they should leave, it will create a social chaos that could further overwhelm the military junta. And I think they should not contemplate that. At this stage, perhaps the neighboring states, Borno, Yobe, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, Sokoto State, perhaps there's a need for them to play a role also in order to educate the border communities so that this message can be carried to the military junta for them to understand the consequences of further provocative diplomatic action that will lead to a very chaotic situation which would at the end of the day even overwhelm them. I do not think majority of their people are on the same page on this issue with the junta. I do not think so. Looking at the social media already, their citizens are beginning to say, look, you should concentrate on the issue of security. You should concentrate on the issue of the economy. You should address the various challenges that is facing our country. Of course, it is natural for the opposition to also seek for a credible or a timetable, framework towards transition to a democratic governance. I do not think they will fold their arms.
Right. Karima, how do you delink this from the political coalition that's beginning to assume? I mean, there are some voices in the north of Nigeria, particularly some very influential voices and loud too, who have jumped on the bandwagon of using this for either some reason or other, some discontent with political situation in parts of, for some reason, who have jumped on this to now speaking for a whole region and warning against certain consequences, while not at the same time verifying the veracity of such information that they receive.
Well, really unfortunate. Security is something that should never be politicized, even though, of course, sometimes the politicization of security leads to certain outcomes. But in this instance, given the situation that both countries are in, and then the very adverse consequence of the politicization of the threat that could emanate from these two regions, I think it's unpatriotic. It should never be contemplated. They are an attempt to politicize something as huge as the kind of allegations made by General Chani. Yes, no doubt, some Nigerian politicians, as it were, took advantage of the situation, either inadvertently or perhaps even advertently, to make statements that suggested the belief what General Chani was saying. But anyone who is worth his onions and really understands what is happening in the country, I mean, what is very clear, and I think Ambassador Dauda did highlight that point, there are diplomatic channels. If a country, especially one that understands the significance of the establishment of such channels, when you have such allegations, one of the first things to do is to channel them through those mediums. Now, you give time, and if after the period the other country does not do, you escalate the situation. And one of the ways to escalate it, you could even go to a multilateral channel. the three countries are still members of perhaps the EU and then even the UN. Those are multilateral channels where you could go to if the bilateral channel does not work for you. But that wasn't done. You went, granted an interview and then made serious allegations, including mentioning the names of certain Nigerian officials and providing location. Now the good thing, and for me this is one part, we didn't really highlight it in our conversation, the residents of those locations that he mentioned actually came out to say, look, we're here, where you mentioned, and there is nothing like French bases in them, and it was covered in the media. So I'm hearing, it's not confirmed yet, that we, on the other hand, Nigeria, were pursuing the diplomatic channel. We've invited the Nigerian ambassador in Nigeria. We've asked him to produce evidences, and I'm sure we've given him time. I'm hoping that if he doesn't provide that evidence, we will go on air, as it were, to mention that he hasn't provided that. Now, that, unfortunately, I think is a circumstance that we've found ourselves given the current situation. And I'm hoping that those politicians who made those statements, whether inadvertently or advertently, should have learned from their experience. There is a particular senator from Kebbi State. I'm not going to mention names, but I was taken aback. This was at the early stages when the issue of Lakurawas came up, and then there was a military operation, and then that senator came out to say the Lakurawas had been pushed to Niger. This was like 2 months ago, and the moment I read that, I said, no, this is wrong. You can't issue a statement saying that you have pushed, quote-unquote, the enemy from your territory into another neighbor's territory. Whatever the intention was, it's wrong. I'm citing that example that perhaps some of our officials have inadvertently made statements, not to support what General Chani said, but which he may have latched on to build upon. So again, back to strategic communication, every leader, whether you are a government appointed leader, as long as you are holding a political office, you speak for the Nigerian state. Whatever comes out of your mouth, it can either support an aspect of Nigeria's policy or it can be used against the Nigerian state. So I think the Ministry of Information has been cited, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Office of the National Security Advisor. There is a need to engage more with our leaders so that they understand the relevance of the kind of narrative and messaging that goes out of their mouth. So the politicians who think this is an opportunity to gain some form of popularity, whether cheap or whatever, this is not. With security, you can never do that. Because the consequence, if you allow this to de-escalate, it could also affect you, it can swallow you up. So I'm hoping that this is a lesson for everybody and that going forward, we've all learned from it.
Also, I'll come back to the question of communication. And like Kabir mentioned earlier, it's a maxim that's been used over time. If it bleeds, it leads. As they used to say then, that dog bites man, no news. Man bites dog, big news. Right. How do we begin to, as a people, because what is happening now can be scary, especially in an age where AI will able to generate things. I mean, you said a credible search machine had debunked that video that was going around. It could have been, anyone could sit back and even generate this thing using AI, and it would be believable to the undiscerning, and that's what we have now. And yet, others say, well, there's no need to put in some form of regulation.
No, I think what is important is actually, we are struggling to be a nation. We're a country. You can define our boundary. You can even define who constitutes a country called Nigeria. But we are still struggling to be a nation. A nation is, a collection of people within a boundary that have shared values, shared commitments, and there has to be a point at which we would say, look, country first. And that's what was missing in this. This man just threw wild allegations at our country and at our leaders.
We lapped it up.
And we lapped on it because we do not understand. Anybody who thinks he is fit and qualified to lead Nigeria at any level, from councillor to president, should be able to understand that there is a strategic interest of Nigeria that must be protected over and above whatever political expediency does exist. But again, we must also say that governments at all levels, not just at federal level, but at federal, state, local government, and even members of National Assembly and everybody, must work very assiduously to ensure that we bridge the trust deficit that exists between people who govern this country and the citizens of the country. Perhaps that should be even the major plank of our strategic communication, how to bridge this trust deficit so that citizens can trust people in government, and people in government will be able to work in, believing that, yes, they have the trust of their own citizens.
Right. Now let's go over to just now, Gerald Long. Your final comments as we round off. Gerald.
Well, myself, and Happy New Year. Let me talk about a little bit from what my friend Ambassador Dauda Alari said. There is a segment that we have not utilized properly in this country, and that is the defense diplomacy. The Alumni Association of the National Defense College is a veritable tool that could have been used at the beginning of this process and even right now. Most of the leaders or the junta members are members of the Alumni Association. Not just the alumni of the Defense College, there are many of them that attended the Staff College. Some of them were trained at the Air Force Institute and the rest. So there are a lot of Nigerian officers who have been trained and have a lot of colleagues and friends that would have engaged them constructively in a way of moving forward, so that the issue of this sort of escalation and the rest wouldn't have been there. So I think next time we have to look at it, because government has to make a deliberate effort too to make sure that the Alumni Association are properly keyed into our strategic interests in dealing with countries that around where we have officers who train. After all, training them here provides us the leverage of making friends, and for them to be able to understand properly the essence of collaboration and cooperation and working as coalition in multinational operations and the rest. So that should have been properly utilized. The other aspect about strategic communication, I think, which was rightly pointed out to, is that we need to actually develop as a nation a bunch of patriotic citizens who will aspire to leadership. It's one thing to have a policy, it's another thing to have those who operate them. So we need to have that, and then coupled with that is that we need a transition law which and then with the funding probably in an election year. We should be compulsory for all our elected members to undergo some capacity building in national security, strategic communication, and all whatnot. They're talking about our national values, what they are, and the rest. Today, the trust deficit that Oranjo talked about is so great that hardly do you trust leaders these days. Whatever they say, you don't trust, and that's why. Even when the government debunked this, you still have people coming out, and there are a lot of people understand this thing. But because of the lack of everybody is rushing to say what the first in the news, like you said, the mainline media came up and were copying or bringing out what the foreign heads accusing Nigeria. I think they should have had channels where they could have confirmed this news before going out to the media. In any case, they have correspondences in the defense, they have correspondences in foreign affairs, who could actually confirm this for them before they go out as front pages to carry between themselves. Oh. So I think we need to do more in terms of using what we have to be able to achieve the others. About the traditional rulers we talked about, let me just learn, Cyril, please. Some of them are good, but we need to do more background checks on our traditional rulers, not them alone, even those in position of authority, to make sure that even before you become a traditional ruler, you have a sense that you are a patriotic and a loyal citizen that actually sees the interests of Nigeria and the citizens at hand before you do. A lot of them do things that they are the ones, they create a lot of problems. Some of them are very shady past, and you cannot change at this level. I speak with experience, and I'm sure Ambassador Dola knows about this. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Israel.
All right, so thank you so much, and this is where we must conclude this conversation. And that to say to all our guests, a very happy, rewarding, and prosperous New Year to you all. Thank you so much for being on this program, Dr. Kabir Adabu, Honorable Ahmed Saju, General Jonathan Temlong, and Ambassador Dauda Eladi. We appreciate you and wish you a happy 2025. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, and to all of you who followed us up to this point, once again, have a prosperous 2025. I'm Cyril Stober.